Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful, beautiful day here. I suppose give you the weather, not forecast, but the weather information. Each time I start one of these videos, anyway, we're really beginning to get the warmth here. Not the kind of warmth that you have in India, though it could get warm in the summer. Anyway, I've spoken quite a bit about my cycling. I am a keen cyclist, not a hugely powerful cyclist. Hang on, just get rid of this. Oh hell, stick it down there. But I like to challenge. I like to challenge the stereotypes to do with age and other things as well. Sometimes gender, though. Some amazingly powerful female women cyclists, and this lockdown has been and is an opportunity for me to train, especially with the smart trainer that I've got, which is I meant to record this, so I'll show it in a future video so you can maybe see it in the background if you're interested. So it's a fixed thing that you mount the bike on, not the new bike, keeping that sort of quite separate, and hoping to ride out on that next week when the lockdown eases a little bit here. So it's fixed, and the one I have is a very what we call smart trainer. So makes a Bluetooth connection with my computer, and so I can link it to an app online, Swift, which simulates routes. And there's a mixture of routes. There are simulations of real places, real routes in the world. So they have ones in New York, in Central Park. They have some in Richmond, Virginia, in Yorkshire, London, Innsbruck. And then there's a whole raft of virtual, completely created, and amazingly creative, amazingly like fantasy world. So you could be riding under a volcano, and there's lava coming down, or riding, when you come to a connection between two islands, you ride in an underwater tunnel. I'll post one of the pictures as the thumbnail for this video. And so it's fascinating, and it simulates all the hills, so it really gets tough. It's just a very, very sophisticated, very clever way of riding or running and training, because there's all sorts of measurements being taken on this. And because it's tough, it's just as tough as it is riding up a hill, riding on one of the hills there, and downhill. You can go fast. And there have been times when, I've been cycling downhill and really got up speed at might be 50 or 60 kilometers an hour. And then there's a corner, approaching a corner. And I'm thinking, this is a dangerous speed at which to approach this corner. This is a bit reckless. And I have to remind myself, it's just a game. It's just an online app. But it is so real that I'm reacting to the terrain, the roads, as if it were real. So having this concern about, especially the corners at speed, when you can go around the corners at whatever speed you like, and you're not going to come off, you're not going to fall off. The only time you'll come off the bike is if you go so slow up a hill, it thinks you've stopped, and then you see your avatar get off the bike. So it's an interesting virtual world, and they simulate all sorts of different weather conditions. I'm just going to blow my nose. They simulate all sorts of weather conditions. In fact, the other day it was a thunderstorm here, and I was riding one of these virtual routes, and they had a thunderstorm on the app, and I thought, I didn't need this really. I could have done with a sunny route on this app today, just to kind of feel more lifted with the weather. Anyway, so it's a virtual world. And really that's what we have anyway, is a virtual world. We're creating the world the way we experience the world. So we make our experience, and it can go much further than that in our thinking and experience if you want it to. But I think so our environment at many, many levels is an expression of who we are. I was talking to somebody yesterday on Zoom, of course. I did actually contact some of my family from Liverpool, although they're all over the UK, yesterday, and I haven't spoken to them. We've had occasional messages. I haven't seen them for a few years. This is not my son, but cousins and people like that. And I suggested, as I'm sure many people are, that we catch up and have a chat on Zoom. And so one of them came back and said, "What Zoom?" Okay, start. Let's take a few steps back and start again. Where was I going with that? That's the only disadvantage of doing things spontaneously. Although I always admired Frank Farrelly. He was totally spontaneous. And he'd go, where was I going with that? I don't know. Well, it'll come back to me. And I thought that gave self great permission to just go with whatever happens. And the other thought, the memory that I had was a time when I was about to do a conference, talk to a large group in, I think it was it Norway? Maybe it was Finland. And before I did it, somebody said to me, well, don't expect a reaction. That the characteristic of audiences there is that they will sit there impassively and not respond and not react. So actually I did design a very experiential session on that basis, which worked very well. And the other thing that this person who was advising me said, they said, well, just imagine that you're doing a television broadcast and that you don't get a response from the audience and that you continue just as it's, as if it's going okay. And that was tremendous advice, because otherwise I could have read that non-reaction as being disappointment or dislike or disapproval of my session, that it wasn't getting to them. And I remember at the very end of that session, there was a group of people came up to me afterwards and someone said, oh, thanks so much, that was a fantastic session. And I thought, well, I would never have known. There were not many clues. They did participate in the practical things that I gave them, and they participated very well. But when it was kind of an open session, there was just very little response. And yet, their feedback was that was great. And I would not have read it that way, because, it was not my usual, the way I would usually interpret that non-verbal behavior. So I find it interesting. I often get asked, people say to me, does NLP work? I think it's a ridiculous question. Sorry if you're one of those people that's asked me that. I mean, it's not a thing, it's a way of studying. It's a way of creating ways and choices, and having choices to create the results that we want. Does it work? Well, if it gets you the result that you want, then it works. So, for me, that's an example. It's a way of creating an environment and a result and an experience. It's a way of shaping that experience in such a way that it works for us. So that's very significant, I think, in this pandemic, where I know that some people are really struggling with it. And I thank God for having learned these things, because, well, I'm in a great place, as I've said. I couldn't wish for a more ideal place to be in lockdown, with incredible neighbours and incredible space. And some people are not in that position. And even so, people make very different things of their experience. So, as an example, if you pay attention, let's take a very simple filter, one of the what's technically called the meta programs in NLP. If you pay attention to what's not there, what you haven't got, that's what you're going to experience. That's going to affect you and affect your state. And if you pay attention to what you have got, and I was just laying in bed this morning, really, really, I know there's this whole gratitude thing, be grateful for, it all sounds a bit formal to do it formally, I think. But I was laying there just being hugely grateful for the connections, the friendship that I have with neighbours here, the fun that we have together, just the relationships that we've got are, and I think they've been heightened in this confinement. And I'm so grateful for just the abundance of resources. That includes food that we have here. Just, I've got bushes in the garden laden with figs that will ripen later in the year. Cherries are about to come out on the trees. My neighbour hands over what's called blet, green and eggs, and garlic. He grows some garlic. I'm going up to the farm this afternoon. I'll get a crate of assorted vegetables. It's amazing. And I do feel really, really thankful for that, amongst many, many other things. And I suppose mostly, not always, that's what I have learned where to put my attention. So where we put our attention creates a certain kind of energy, and that influences our environment, and it influences how we feel. So does NLP work? Well, the test is, does it get you the results that you want when you learn to make new choices for yourself in your language, in the way you speak to yourself, in the way that you speak to other people, in your non-verbal behavior, in what you believe, in your sense of self, in all of that. There's so many possible choices that we can experiment with in order to create a virtual world, which is what we have, that is what we wish it to be. Sounds simple, I know there's probably lots of questions about that, and nevertheless. So what would you like your virtual world, your world, to be today? You could say going forward into the future as well. What do you want the world to be going forward in the future? This is the time for us to do that, to really, we're at a point of almost decimation of the human species. It has that potential. And we can be reborn if we choose. Well, we may not have any choice in some of that. And what choice are you making for yourself? How do you wish to thrive? And how do you want the world to thrive? Which it is at the moment, in the sense of, not in terms of commercialism or, hard business, but it certainly is in terms of nature. And how do you wish to be a part of that?